Awesome episode of Bitcoin Live today. With me in the show is Chiral, or should I say GriffiN? Welcome.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Bitcoin Live NFT Liberty.
Yeah, it's I think very early there. We were talking about it 6 o'clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as the stream progresses, there will be light streaming into your room, and people will more clearly see your face.
I'm
But
excited for that.
while we get there, can you sort of give people a short introduction of who you are and how you got involved in NFTs and crypto?
Yeah, so TLDR, I came in on the exciting bull run of 2021. I basically got into NFTs through, well, I found crypto through NFTs, as I think a lot of people did actually, in 21. And I was really excited about the art. I had known about crypto back in 2017. When I went to college, pretty much everyone was talking about it. Like everyone was like, blockchain this, blockchain that. You know, there's all sorts of new tech options, and I was like, cool, sounds exciting. Have fun with that. But then, you know, when I sort of realized you could have this like network of art that was, well, networks that like could keep art and data and potentially really valuable information online and uncensored. That just super excited me. Like the idea of like, oh yeah, you can have, you know, textbooks for school, or, you know, all these banned books, and have it like totally available online for anyone to access. That was just like, you know, I was super psyched. So I came in, minted a bunch of art, bought art, sold art, that kind of thing. And I've just, you know, stayed involved, and I've joined a company building some cool products in Web3, and, you know, I've just kept minting art and stayed involved since then.
So I know you from the Twitter spaces that you do. I was actually on your Twitter space, I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Time flies. So tell us a little bit about your Twitter spaces and also about those products that you mentioned on Web3.
Yeah, so Twitter Spaces was definitely like what kept me around, I think. I don't know if I would still be involved if I mean, I probably would be, but like not to the same extent. Just like really easy to meet people and chat with people, even though it's, you know, a centralized thing. It's not really crypto in any way. It's just everyone who uses crypto, or a lot of people do them. Yeah, so I host sort of bi-weekly Twitter Spaces, and they're pretty chill. I mean, we just chat about art and philosophy sometimes, new topics in the space, you know, same thing everyone else does. But it's good fun. And then on Tuesday and Thursday for my company, which is Stubbs Technology, we do sort of another general space where we try to bring in artists and people to sort of interview and see what they've been up to, as well as just like general product updates. And our company, so we're building a page builder so that like anyone can make a website that has like Web3 integrations, whether that be like NFTs, whether that be like different trading updates. I'm not a trader, but you know, we've devs and we'll be interviewing traders. But it's you know, a lot of it is for creators and people in the space who are in need of a website, essentially. Yeah.
And I see you need some followers there, so people go follow you also on Stubbs.
Yeah, we have another product which we've been building since June of last year, but this is the one that like you know, we're really pushing for into the future, because I think, you know, our other product is good. It's a solid product. It's called Shill.me with one L,
Yep.
and it's like essentially a landing page like for NFTs. So it's like a lightweight 2D display that you can see in your browser, and I think in 2021 that would have been so powerful. Like everyone would have joined. It would have been so much fun. And we're still growing it. Like I'm still, you know, like I'm the person who like runs the spaces there and all that kind of stuff. But my thinking is that it doesn't solve like everyone's problem. It's pretty good for artists. It's pretty good for collectors, but it's not as general as maybe we could make it. And so this is something we're trying to work on with stubs.
Well, and this is, well, this was a bear market, so it was an ideal time to sort of start building. Was it also, I mean, you're not that long in crypto. Was it also sort of a harsh first experience with crypto, or was it okay?
Oh yeah, I mean there was good things, but yeah, no, it's been tricky. You sort of learn a lot really fast, and I've definitely learned a lot about investing quickly, at least in crypto. But
Yeah, I always say, the best time to learn trading, and then also, the whole space basically is in the bear market, right? That's, the fastest learning school.
yeah, I, for the most part, sold art rather than like investing my own money, but I definitely did a good bit of that still. I think most of that has come in the bear market just by volume.
But that
Yeah,
also sort of, then you had the bad years, so now you're gonna reap the rewards in the good years, right? I mean, some people
that's what
sort
they
of start
say.
out most people start out in the bull market, and then they actually don't learn much because they think it only goes up and everything only gets better, right?
Fair. Yeah, I mean, I definitely did start out in the bull market. I remember I saw cryptodes at point 0.3 ETH when I first joined in August. I was like, wow, those are cool. I would buy these if they weren't $800. I spent the next 2 weeks seeing them go to like 15 ETH floor, and I was just like, I'm the biggest idiot in the world. And then I joined in another collection that I thought was similarly cool, and it just crashed to zero. It's because NFTs are, even, especially collections, are even more, let's call it volatile than crypto. But yeah, so, I watched Benjamin Cohen a lot, in terms of like how to understand the market. Obviously, there's many views on it, but it's just, for someone who's not that involved, he's pretty level-headed, and it keeps me generally calm.
Yeah, I mean, it's very good to have sources that you trust. I mean, most people just watch, YouTube videos that say, this coin or this project is going to do a 10x or a 1000x, or, you got a lot of these shill YouTube channels and also other channels. So it's very important to find trusted sources that you can actually sort of check, and that they make predictions, which you can also check, and which also admit mistakes when they make them, but who are generally trustworthy and not over excited or making extreme calls, right?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, it is, all a game of predictions, right? It's sort of what is the most likely outcome versus what is the outcome that happens, and you can never know the latter before it happens. So,
True. So you also make amazing art, and that's actually
thank
the
you.
main reason that you're on here. Uh, and that is this website that you created. Um, and I love it. I mean, it's sort of really my style. I also do a little bit of art, but not as colorful and as detailed as your art. So yeah, let's dive a little bit into the art that you have created, and also this website, and where you want to take things.
Sure. That's the right question. Where do I want to take things? And the answer to that is figuring it out as we go along, which is kind of always what it's been. Yeah. So with art, my parents are both professors of theater, former like professional actor and director. So I've always been involved in some sort of art since I was a kid, going to all sorts of like plays, and obviously very passionate about film as well. And since I was pretty young, I drew casually, did that up until high school. And then in high school, I was like, I sort of made the decision that I'm doing this so much. I really like doing this. I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm just going to, for the rest of my life, this is what I'm going to do. And it wasn't so much a decision to like do it as a quote unquote career. Like I didn't I would love to make money from it, but I think there's sort of this, when it comes to like the job options for it, I sort of saw concept art, which was, if I'm going to make art, like I would be down to make concept art, but also it's, there's not many jobs in that industry, which everyone talks about. And also I'm really picky in a good way and a bad way. I want the stuff that you're seeing right now. This is the stuff I want to make. If I can make stuff like this or concept designs around things like this for a video game or a movie or whatever, 100% in. If you're asking me to make potted plants that I design in like some version of things, that there's so many people that would do that better, and I don't want to necessarily do it, even though there's so much you'd learn doing that. And then of course like graphic design and stuff, and I'll do that at work, and like you can do anything. But I think I sort of realized there's like the professional side of it and the personal side of it, and that's what I'm trying to emphasize here.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of why you interview other artists, also to get inspiration and sort of perhaps collaborate, but also basically get ideas and exchange ideas, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's true. There's the selfish element of I'm getting to talk to someone who I respect too, which is always fun. But no, it's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty thrilling to talk to like an artist who is like, they have a style that they've sort of honed for so many years, and then just sort of getting to understand like, how does this person tick? Why are they making this? Who are they? All that kind of good stuff.
So speaking about admiration, who do you admire in the space? Who sort of really ignites you? And also, what are your influence before you sort of got into NFTs?
Yeah. So yeah, the influence before we got into NFTs could go. I could talk about that for hours. But in the space, the first collection that I ever read about it in 2020, the first crypto-related thing that was like NFTs, and I thought it was interesting, but I didn't get involved at the time because, Foundation back then was like super picky, and I was like, I didn't really do the research to figure out like that there were other ways to do it, but so I just sort of, forgot about it until August. But there was this article about this collection called Hash Masks. They're just like a little grouping 16,400 something collection. And I just thought it was really interesting. It was just like all these really weird dudes with different art. And so, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I don't have one yet. I will get one when hopefully the floor price drops, because what I've realized is does that a lot for things. And so, I don't know that much about the people behind it or the art, but I thought that was interesting. And then sort of in the space, obviously 6529, the punk fella, is kind of the guiding light as far as I see it for what the whole NFT space is about. Most of it's not going to be the whole open metaverse thing, but I think if there's, any real value here, it's going to be open metaverse stuff rather than like, people will make mobile style games that, you can gamble on and you can put money into and get items back. And there'll be some really good games too. Things that are as good as RuneScape and stuff, and that will be really exciting. But, I think from a ethical perspective, open metaverse and sort of like ways for people to have like access to data as well will be really important. So I think, that's 6529 is pretty inspiring in that regard.
I totally agree, and people should definitely follow that account because he also has these sort of mind-bending ideas. That he has awesome threads, right, with a lot of followers and a lot of retweets, and there's always basically everything he says is sort of worthwhile. I'm just looking at this particular picture, and that sort of reminds me of the Dark Crystal. Is that correct?
I actually hadn't seen that movie until like a few years after that image, but I do like the Dark Crystal a good amount. I would say
sketchy.
maybe the inspiration for this would be things like sort of like Irish mythology and yes, sort of that sort of like folklore element.
Which is also sort of in your display image or your avatar, I could say. Why did you pick that particular image of your avatar, which we can see on the background here?
Oh, like my PFP on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird one because that's not my art. That's a collection called DotDotDots. Um, I think for the most part, my avatar is the QR code that links to the Chiral Center, Chiral.day, the website. But I just like these guys. I don't know. They're nifty. I saw them as well when I first joined the space, and it was, they were like 3 ETH or something back then. I was like, I'm not going to buy these, but they look super cool.
True.
And they have this like mysterious. I mean, just the blurb kind of gets me. And I didn't really join the community or anything. I waited a while, and I've gotten a couple since then. But it's something about just like, I mean, the aesthetic of them is really cool to me. It reminds me of kind of like Miyazaki films and the sort of strange creatures you find within. But sort of the fact that they're like, there's something to do like on chain. They're kind of alive still until there's $10,000 ETH. It's like there's it's not gonna be done. And I've sort of come around. I've joined the Discord now, and it's like the story behind these things is fascinating. Essentially, totally a non-founder, totally a non-artist, and it's kind of a rug if you want to put it in that sense, but not in the way that most people would call a rug. At least I'm not sure I would. And I'm a
It's
bag
more
holder,
like
so
sort of people who are inspired and who are trying to make something and who are really good at storytelling. But I also really like the simplistic art style. It kind of reminds me of those notebooks. I forgot the name of it, but there's a person who made these sort of creatures that are sort of ink, basically ink, like this one. And that were really simplistic, but also sort of they capture a sort of mood or essence or atmosphere, right?
yeah. No, I think they do a great job of that. You'll have to send me the link to that because
Yeah,
definitely, yeah. Yeah,
I
and
will.
the interesting thing about these guys is like they're essentially giving the community puzzles, like really, really hard puzzles that people have to like go into the blockchain and like do all sorts of weird shit. Like there's no clues on how to solve them. They'll just like give out in a puzzle, and people have been stuck on one of them for like 8 months or something. And so there's these like 3 mints on OpenSea, and there's unlocked content behind them.
Cool.
And yeah, no one knows how to get into them right now. Where people have like sent messages to the wallet that made them. They've done all sorts of things. So it's interesting. It's just like and presume and they're basically like, yeah, they're this collection. You will all make of it something. We're not going to do that for you. So I think
But,
it's sort of this weird decentralized community of people who are just interested in puzzle solving and like this kind of art style, I guess.
but isn't that also one of the really cool stuff about NFTs and the crypto art space, right? That you got all these sort of very talented but very diverse people who are really good at storytelling and sort of capturing an audience, either with puzzle making or backstories or dropping exciting art that unlocks certain features because through smart contracts. Well, I don't have to tell you anything, but you can do basically anything you want with this technology, right? With storytelling, but also movie making. I mean, we're on the cusp of something really big here, and I totally agree with you. I hope it will be completely an open metaverse and fully
Mm-hmm.
decentralized, but it will probably be a mix of both. But I guess all these sort of elements inspire you to do the things that you do. you also sort of mentioned movie making. What do you have in mind in that regard, or games? Because you also mentioned games.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
would
I
you
think
really
I
like to do
said
with your art?
filmmaking very much has been more of like a connoisseur, as a viewer, watcher, that kind of thing. I love film. I would love to make films or be involved in the filmmaking process too. So that may happen. I don't have any, strict plans regarding that though.
But is there like a dream, something that you would, like a specific image or something that you have been? Yeah, I can also understand that maybe you don't want to give it away if you have like a really cool idea and that
Yeah,
someone else
I've
runs with it.
to maybe to put some more context on things. Like I've have like tons of journals and things that have sketched out and written out, and like sort of plots that I've made and
Cool.
done things for. It's just I almost flew to Mexico City once to visit an artist friend to do filming, and then coronavirus hit, and I was just like, okay, well, this isn't happening. It hasn't happened since. It's sort of one of those things that like it was from the old world, so it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, and I think I think part of my art is sort of about visiting other worlds and having these things that like my hope is that when someone sees it, they're just for a second, the image is like a new reality for them. They sort of cross over into this thing where it's like things exist outside of themselves and outside of maybe the realm of strict materialism that our daily lives are so often kind of brought up in.
That they're
Yeah, and then
self-transported.
yeah, or maybe not even transported. Like you still are where you are, but things have changed. Where you are has changed, and who you are has changed. Which that would be great. I'm not saying my art's good enough to do that necessarily, but that's always the goal. So that's why I keep creating stuff. Yeah, and I think for games, what the really, really powerful video games for me are ones where you are transported when you're playing them. And I think a lot of people have a similar experience. Same as movies, same as books, where it's like, it is kind of, you do enter like another world. For me, for example, Dark Souls, Guild Wars are sort of examples of games with like these really powerful aesthetics behind them. And if you look at the games, you see it, and also if you look at the concept art, you see it. Just really rich, deep storytelling and stuff.
And of course, NFTs could play a very powerful role in that regard, right? Because it sort of gets the immersion even more complete by sort of creating this interaction that becomes possible, which is, I mean, you do have some interactive movies that you can sort of choose, like go left or right, but NFTs could really take that whole thing to a new level, right?
I mean, I think there's there's a place for NFTs, and there's maybe things where they aren't as relevant. Yeah, because I feel like all of this stuff, works well enough as is. But I think NFTs, for me, what they do is they sort of they do give life to things in that other people, once someone has one, it's sort of like out of my control, but it exists out there, which I find really kind of exciting. So, for example, like if I have a sketchbook, I have one right here actually. It's like, this is great. I've spent a lot of time drawing and thinking about like all these things that I want to make, and I've sort of created them.
Can I make you a little bit bigger so that people can see?
Sure. You have a sketchbook here, and it's great. There's all these pages, and they can fill them with things, but that stays here. It doesn't do anything. I think a lot of artists have hundreds of thousands of work that they, no one sees really. And then with traditional social media, you have that too, where it's like this. You have it where it's like, you have a wall of images that you've posted, and they're there, and people can like it if they scroll to it, and then it stays there. It's dead, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, like when it's in the viral network or whatever, like when the networks pick up on it, it's alive for a little bit, but that's only if there's some like monetary incentive for it. But with NFTs, I can send you one right now, and it's like, you have that. It's not like necessarily like viral in the sense that like everyone's seeing, but it now is a thing, like an image that exists in the blockchain. There's a hash that links to it, and then you could send that to a friend. You could send that to a friend, or you can just keep it, and it's sort of, and that's up to the person who has it. So it's sort of more than just like, it's not like just a static upload. It has some life to it, which I really like.
Yeah, it incentivizes people, right, to become involved, because then you have a piece of that artwork, or you actually have the artwork itself. But you can also display it to everybody without worrying anybody capturing it. So that has a lot of benefits, and you could even sort of allow people to edit it at some point, right? I mean, I'm not sure if many artists do that, but basically, if you put it out there, and you could even allow people to sort of edit it and maybe pass it along.
I'd be very down for people to do that for my work.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool idea. So we talked about your art, we talked about your business, we talked about your views on crypto. How do you view sort of the bigger space? What is your view where we are now and where it is going, and maybe also what are your views on the market as a whole? Right, I know you're not really into the trading part, but
I
of
mean,
course, the rise of
I've
Bitcoin is
given my hand
important.
at it. I guess you'd say I'm burned. And obviously, I have no expertise in any way. Like but markets as a whole, wow, we really are at like mortgage rates are like 6%. That's not been the case through my lifetime. Yeah, I have no idea. We're in like right now it's, what month is it? It's February. We were in like a recent pump with everything, which is nice because I've been buying stuff. So it's like, okay, it's cool. But, I don't necessarily know if that's going to last the rest of the year. It feels like it could be kind of one of those situations where, regulatory pressure and all these stable coins and stuff is like pushing down the prices of a lot of assets. Maybe not Bitcoin, maybe more of sort of like the altcoins. And the way I'm positioning myself for that is holding a lot of altcoins and having them in liquidity pools and staking them. But I think if you have an asset right now that you think is really good for the long term, could do well. Things like Polkadot or Cosmos or sort of any number of projects. Obviously Ethereum and Bitcoin, but things that you have like a couple hundred developers working on. It's like, the price might go down, but you essentially have like this network that is becoming more of a really complicated ecosystem. And so,
Yes. So you're
yeah,
more approaching it from an investing standpoint and looking at the larger picture and the long term, right?
I mean, I'm not investing. I'm not like securities or anything, but potentially, yeah. I think like I mostly, I've done some short-term things here and there, buying a monkey picture here and then selling a monkey picture there. But I do mostly try to buy things that like I'm comfortable holding for a while, anyways. And like for what happened last year, a lot is like a lot of the things that I was really interested in, especially some things that like developer friends were like, this stuff is quite cool. I lost 80% of its value. I was like, okay, so I sold it, and then I bought back in, just bought some more of it, especially if it's like an interesting project.
Yeah.
And I'm really blessed to have been able to do that because a lot of people bought my art, and so I was sort of like, well, I am able to just keep it in crypto, move it around. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you sell your art during a bear market, let's see what it does during a bull market, right?
Yeah. True.
So that's only a good thing, and I think you're right. I mean, approaching the space as an more like with an investor mindset than as a trader or speculator mindset is personally also my sort of strategy. So I see it over the longer term, and like you say, sometimes I do a trade, and sometimes you do crazy stuff like invest in some silly altcoin, like a tiny altcoin, and sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're unlucky, right? But the
Yes.
longer view is basically where I am aiming, and I think people like yourself and many other people in the space are building this ecosystem, like you say, and developing. And like Ethereum has so many developers working on it, and it's so generally accepted, right? It's simply not going away anytime soon. I think never ever, probably. But yeah,
If we have a
that's
solar
also my.
flare that wipes out like the internet, then it could go away.
But being an
Maybe.
artist is like something special within this broader space. What would you sort of advise somebody who's like an artist or who wants to get started in NFTs? What are some of the stuff that they should never ever do, and stuff that they should definitely do?
Yeah, I've definitely made a bunch of mistakes. So let me think. Definitely don't DM people with your recent auctions and things. Typically, they don't like that. Definitely don't. What else don't you do? Don't list work at arbitrary times randomly. That's what a lot of people do, including myself. And, it works sometimes, but I would say try to have like a relatively strict regimen or like plan of release. That's it, especially if you're trying to make it like a career out of it. I think for me, I do. I like to have it a little bit more spontaneous because I'm working with Stubbs and I'm sort of building this brand there. I can be a little bit more relaxed with my art in terms of like earning from it. And also a lot of what I do are commissions. So definitely also like if you want commissioned work, be open to that. But definitely, I think a really important thing is to know the worth of your art for commissions, especially like if someone's offering you $50 to do a custom version of one of their NFTs or something. I mean, if you live in a country where $50 is a lot of money, maybe take it. But if you live in the United States, probably don't take it. I think especially if it's going to take more than if it takes an hour, sure. But if it takes any more than that, and if you've been working for like 10 years or something, it's like, yeah, not worth it. And I think also, for artists, the NFT market can be really, really brutal. It's slow. Sales can be quite infrequent at times. I've taken the approach of sort of minting and finding multiple blockchains that, things are happening on different things, sort of find up one blockchain here and it's like, I mint one kind of work here and then a different kind of work on a different blockchain. Most artists will stick to Ethereum. Some will go on Solana. I'd say find a community of like fellow artists who you really like, and then just engage with them. If you have the means, maybe buy one of their works, or just engage, chat with them, and kind of make friends, and then stick around. And
would you say stick to one platform, or would you say experiment with different ones, or maybe even do all of them at the same time?
I would say probably stick with one platform and put your best work on there, and then keep putting your best work on there, and people will find you, especially if you're loud on crypto Twitter. But I think down the line there'll be other ways. Keep building social media stuff, which is a nightmare, but it's what you have to do. Yeah, and I think it's better to be on one platform, and the reason for that is just because like people will then be able to see sort of your whole body of work. I'm giving this advice to someone who is absolutely not at all listened to, but it's definitely probably the best way to successfully do the whole NFT art thing. And then,
So,
yeah, just keep at
no,
it.
go on.
Keep at it.
And so, what is your favorite platform? Blockchain?
Ordinals, probably Bitcoin ordinals. It's not really a platform, but that's pretty exciting just because it's straight data storage on Bitcoin. Yeah, in terms of platforms, there's a few. On Solana, Exchange Art and Foundation are both really good. The Exchange Art team is awesome. Then on Ethereum, I like Manifold as a minting method. Foundation's good, very clean. But I think in general, like the more control you have over your NFTs and the minting, especially for people who are non-technical, the better. So I definitely like Manifold on Ethereum. I really hope something like that comes out on Solana. And then for Tezos object, I really loved Hic@Nunc when it was alive, and I think there are versions of that people can still use. I think like Teia, Teia dot something is like a version of that. And then, yeah, I mean, object.com, that was pretty great as well.
Yeah, and then Tezos is also very affordable, very cheap to sort of mint on. The downside is, of course, that the artworks are also not that highly priced, right? So it's kind of sort of difficult to sort of make a living out of that if that's your objective, right? I always say, when you're an NFT artist, don't go into it just to make a buck, right? Because I think that's the totally wrong mindset. And in a bear market, you will be blown away if that is. Yeah.
I think also with Tezos, the way I've seen people do that is you release work on Tezos, and if you really like pop off there, you move to ETH, and you can sell for quite high amounts for individual pieces. And for Tezos, the way it often works, you have one of ones, but because there isn't necessarily that, deep liquidity, most people find success having editions, and then because you can buy each for a smaller amount, and then, selling those editions and having people sell between them and stuff, and then sort of you make new work, you sell editions. Very good. Yeah.
And then maybe, two, probably final questions, but so when you're an artist, but also when you're not an artist, two of the things that are probably the most complicated and most difficult things to sort of figure out and to achieve is, the collector side. How do you approach collectors? How do you manage that? And then the second one, which is related, like how do you actually sell your NFTs, right? Because many people say, oh, okay, I'm going to make a ton of NFTs and then I'm going to sell them. And then they quickly figure out that, selling NFTs is like an art in itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
So can you give some tricks and tips? Or advice?
Hot tricks: compromise someone's wallet, steal their ETH. Have a really, really rich friend who will buy your work for a ton, and then people get excited about it. I think the general idea there is, having your best work on one platform really helps with that, because then if people come and they immediately are like, whoa, I like it, that's it kind of speaks for itself to some extent. I think generally being respectful is good, sort of recognizing that people are like collecting a lot of other things and, have other things going on. And then also recognizing that artists can be collectors as well. And also that, if an artist is a collector, they probably are, pretty cautious with what they collect because they don't have the same kind of bags usually. And I think the go-to way is to follow people who are collecting and sort of see what they're collecting and what they're interested in and maybe why. And then, engaging with them, seeing what art they like, talking about the art they like, and then just chatting with them and stuff, and, recognizing that they're people who really like art. And if, they may or may not like your art. Like I follow a bunch of collectors who are like strictly like generative art collectors and stuff. And it's like, they're never going to buy my work because it's just not what they're interested in. But, if I like their work and maybe I retweet something by one of them, someone else who follows me who's maybe a collector is interested in that too. And they'll be like, oh, okay, GriffiN is a person who's cool or something,
And you would also say like support each other's art, like artists among itself, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of the artists keeping each other in the same boat and in the same kind of holding each other's hands in this storm that we're all kind of swimming in. And it is, especially in bear markets, and I think, but even in bull markets, really challenging at times. Like there will be a long periods without sales. And I think anything you can do to get sort of eyes on your work will help with that. And there are so few collectors, honestly, like in crypto for NFTs and for art right now. There's just very few collectors compared to artists. And I think that's a challenge that's kind of going around. But
also I think when artists sort of support each other, it's also sort of like a sign of appreciation, right? If another artist takes the time and spends the crypto or the money to sort of buy something of your work, it is not only sort of a compliment, but also I think it's probably a really good thing that sort of artists are a really big part of this collector community, because that sort of also keeps it focused on art for art's sake, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also quite good because in general, people come in and stay for a week, and a lot of them will some people will copy mint things or do things that
Yeah.
are I'll just take a screenshot of someone else's art and bring that in. Artists are the people who will usually self-police it and be like, hey, that's this other person's art, and then kind of call people out in that. And I think that's also definitely true, especially it feels so amazing when someone who you respect buys your work. And people have different approaches for that. I mean, for what I buy, usually I'll try to buy very small artists' work, just because smaller artists are always in need of collectors, I think, especially if I also buy work that I like, so it's sort of both ways.
Yeah. But
You
you
know,
also started, at the beginning, so you're sort of paying it
Mhm.
back or paying it forward, however you want to call it. But
Yeah,
like what you said is also true, is the if a collector is an artist, then they sort of can also really see the value in the work itself, instead of just the price tag that comes along with it. Which if you're, I mean, some collectors have of course also artistic skills or artistic sense of taste. So, but what you really want is, of course, somebody who actually can appreciate something that you made and sort of get the price right and hodl it or keep it for the art itself, right?
yeah. I mean, I think making a sale's nice, but finding the person who will keep that work forever is kind of the most important thing. Because you could I think that's also maybe the difference between selling a work and having it being shown or something. It's a lot of thousands of people will come and see the work, millions maybe, but if someone owns it, I hopefully that the person is it was made for them almost, even though it wasn't necessarily, but it just kind of was.
And would you then also want it to sort of hang in, I don't know, a decentral land, or in somebody's house on one of these special NFT uh, projectors or screens?
Sure. Yeah, whatever people want to do with it. Um, I've one thing I've been thinking about, I haven't given it enough thought yet, is I'm not sure if I like museums or galleries at all. Just because you put a bunch of work together and they're sort of on display on these white walled spaces, and it kind of feels like dead. It kind of feels like divorced from what the work might otherwise be. If it's sort of, I'm not necessarily saying oh yeah, put my work next to a McDonald's stand in Decentraland or something. That's not necessarily better, but um, you know, it definitely feels. It just can feel strange when you walk through a museum and you see a bunch of here's 15 different artists from 30-year period, and it's somehow you're supposed to understand, you're supposed to feel the art and the lives of those people from that. It's definitely it's kind of like a memorial almost.
A tomb.
A tomb, yeah, which is good. We need tombs. It's always good to have a good
Yeah.
sepulcher somewhere. But yeah, so I think it would be cool definitely to have people to have work in Decentraland or on Cyber and stuff. I think as we go forward in open metaverses, what I would really think is funny. My friend actually, when they saw some of the GIF animation on my website, they're like, I could see that in a club. I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
I,
And then, okay, the final question, because I'm sort of getting a little bit involved more with ChatGPT and AI and
mhm.
stuff like that. What is your sort of view on AI in general and AI in the art space?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. It's more important than crypto. as much as I love crypto. It's more important than almost anything else going on technologically, and that's such a stupid thing to say because almost everything's incredibly important, and will change things. But like, it is true AGI, like general intelligence, that's digital, is going to be very much unlike anything that exists biologically. It's going to be, it won't be instantiated in a physical body. It probably won't be conscious in the way that we interpret consciousness. So it's kind of frightening, but it's also super exciting. I really hope the people who have the ability to host these things and instantiate them are very responsible with it. And yeah, so that's interesting. I think in terms of art and creation and creative work, learn these tools. If you already have a business and a successful thing, it probably won't be that affected by it. But I think learning the tools and understanding how it works is important, and keeping active with it. I think I've used it off and on. I think it's a great tool for generating images. It's definitely pretty existentially terrifying in some ways. That and in that, like, there's going to be, this was always going to be the case, though. It's always going to be the case. Like, infinitely more images and pictures and writing after us, after like the people who are living now, than all of what has come before. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms, people talk about like the crypto adoption curve, or the so I forgot, there's an exact term for it. It's technology adoption curve, where it's like tiny,
Yeah.
tiny, 2% and 3%, and everyone comes in. Sort of doing it from the camera. It's like flat, and then suddenly it spikes. That's for all human artwork and thought and stuff. And it's like, we are just in the beginning, and there's already so much art. Like, no one thinks about the popular novels from 1970. Like, a few of them, people remember a few of them, but you couldn't think of like the New York Times bestseller list from 1970. Almost none of them have any cultural relevance now. So, that was always going to be the case. And I think going forward, we will be flooded with images and content and ideas. And I think it's the sort of thing that you can lose your whole life in. Like, you can, watch hundreds of hours of videos, and, those hundreds of hours, maybe humans spent 10 hours curating them, or less. And that's interesting. I think it's a little scary in the turn, like, I don't want humans to lose their creative endeavors and their will to create, just because an AI can do something faster, right? Like, even though that's the case, an AI is never going to make the work that I'm going to make next before I make it.
Do you
It's
also
just not gonna
agree
happen.
with what some people say is that, basically what an AI is doing at the moment, at least, is, copy pasting and sort of taking what already exists and meshing it up in different ways? Would you say that an AI would never be able to sort of copy, or be able to have the creative spirit or the creative essence that human beings have, to be truly creative?
I think they will be able to. I think that's. I don't think the current systems can. The current system is, digesting. Let's call it. It's sort of like collage, but very strange collage. But the way it's sort of like people like Descartes and these sort of people were like, yeah, animals don't have souls, animals don't have thoughts, they don't have feelings. Maybe, but pretty sure they do. They seem to be pretty good at that. And so what makes animals and people different, and even trees and plants, is sort of the number of connections and how those connections are instantiated neurologically. and I say trees, which is obviously not neurologically, but there is data coming in and out of trees through their root networks and things. And obviously, I wouldn't say a tree is conscious necessarily, but with AI, I think if you get enough information and you get enough an architecture that lets it flow through itself in different ways, I don't see why it couldn't be creative. Like what I mean by that is, you have all of these things that are like with artificial general intelligence. Like if it really gets to the point where it can see itself, maybe not as we see ourselves, but it wouldn't be. It'd be very, very different. But I think it would be able to create. People are already surprised by like the creative innovations from just remixing and copying and thinking like that. Like will it create like humans do? It probably could, because it's been trained on our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors, which is sort of very strange just to think about, because it's like it will be sort of new life, some sort of life maybe, coming out of a species. So it's sort of this like new entity being born from all of the thoughts and creations of sort of all of these other entities. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's like out of the question that AI could be creative. I think that's going to happen. Actually, there's an artist called Lawrence Leck who has an interesting video series that sort of plays fun of the idea of like human creativity and sort of like AI is this other creature that we can't, that's evil or something. And it's sort of, he has this video series and I think it's sort of based in Singapore loosely. But it's all about these like AI in the future, and they're sort of like banned from making art essentially.
Is this? No, that's another one.
Maybe I can find it. Essentially, they're banned from making art, but they do kind of make art, and they it's sort of this dialogue between. I can't. I'll send it to you on Twitter.
Yeah, no, we'll share it later, or I'll put it underneath the video so that people can check it out.
Cool.
But yeah, I think these are very. I think you're probably right, and it's also a very interesting sort of thought experiment. If you had like an alien race, a different kind of race, which also sort of establishes AI at some point, then that sort of origin of that AI would be very different from an AI that's sort of gestated in a human environment with us, right? It would have probably a very different character or soul. I think we could go on and on about this topic. Maybe, do you think we already reached general AI, or do you think we're still a way off?
If there's some basement in Google HQ or something that I don't know about, it's possible. I don't think so. I don't think we're that close to it necessarily, which people will maybe be surprised or get mad at me for saying that, but we've made huge strides in the past 2 years, even with AI. And I don't have any expertise in it, but we are, from my understanding and from the people who have told me stuff, essentially just making bigger neural nets, bigger, badder neural nets, in basically like there's huge strides in how neural networks work, how we train them. But they're still, relatively tame things. They're still, maybe how I'd think of it is like one, I don't have an analogy that would be sufficient, but they're essentially, what we're doing is we're just getting more computing power, more and more and more computing power. We're training more and more tests. We're doing the same thing that you do on these tiny scales, but just grander. So it's not like we haven't found the right architectures to build a mind digitally. I don't think it's like that. I think we found a component that will be a part of a mind, and we're seeing the results of that, and it's pretty spectacular. But those things themselves are not mines. We're seeing like pattern recognition and output and things that look like thought. They look a lot like it, but they are separate from it. Within that, they are maybe part of thought, but they're not themselves all of it.
Well, on that reassuring note, and as the light floods into your room, I think we have to call it a day, or at least your day is just getting started over there. I want to thank you for this really fun interview. I actually really enjoyed it. I know you also have a philosophy background, so it's sort of fun to touch upon all these issues. And we should definitely do it again in the future.
Totally. Yeah. This was awesome. Same as last time. We had a talk before, but I didn't record it. This was so cool. Thank you for bringing me on. These are great. You're a great interviewer. Next time, let's just go into the philosophy stuff and the AI and sort of what it might mean to have like a mind without consciousness, or maybe what digital consciousness could be like, and all that kind of good stuff.
Oh, definitely. I'm actually sort of writing an article on AI right now, so we can probably talk about it by then. And this is, I think, also the first time that people see your face, right? The person behind Chiral.
I've posted a few images here and there, but I usually delete them quickly. So, hello, people.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Anyway, it was really good having you on, and I really enjoyed the conversation and your art. And yeah, let's do this again.
Sounds good.
Okay, take care.
Peace.
And I wish everybody out there a really nice day or evening or morning, whatever it is. And I'll